Hey, what's up, guys? We are back with another Build Beauties, and I am featuring a deck that Top Cut at North Kai 2022 here. It is Red Ascension Ginyu. It was piloted by Kevin Dennis, but the deck is originally Cheyne Runnels' Ascension Ginyu deck that I played a lot against on Octagon. So go ahead and, well, I've introduced you guys already, but go ahead and say hello.
You can go
Ke-
first, Shane. It's your deck.
Hello.
Kevin.
Hey, what's up?
So
It's me,
anyway,
Kevin.
I I've done a bunch of videos with these guys. If you're familiar with the community, both these guys are very competitive players. They've topped cut and won many events. Shane's currently the create a black card, or no, sorry, Sane card from the East Kai that happened 2 years ago pre-COVID. And then Kevin, as you've created Twin Beams. I mean, you've been a TOP competitor, I think, both years in a row, or one of the years in a row. I can't remember.
Two. I've
Yeah.
lost both
So there you go. I think you got to finals
twice.
Times.
twice. Yeah. So
I haven't won,
very
but
good
yeah,
player.
lost.
Absolutely very top tier caliber players. And it was definitely represented by his run with this deck. So Kevin, with this deck, what was your record at North Kai?
Record was 4-1. I was ended up being second seed in the 5-round Swiss. My only loss was to Jacob Schrum, the orange or Goku player. I played him round 3. It was probably my least competitive game of the day, where he literally just bent me over. I just sat there and took damage.
Yeah.
But that was really the outlier in my day. Everything else I managed to be in the game. But yeah, my only loss was to the EXO player, Jacob Schrum.
Okay. And then in top cut, I think you played your brother Kelly, I believe, and he was Enhanced
Yeah,
brother.
yeah.
That was a close
I
game,
know
from my understanding.
it was not what I expected. When I was listening to the top 8 announcement, I figured Jacob was number 1. I figured I was number 2. So I was really listening for number 7, and I know Kelly finally ended up playing Enhanced Broly in a big tournament. And when he was announced as the 7th seed, I know as like you do top 4, and then it mirrors after that.
Yep.
So 1 goes to 8, 2 to 7. So once I saw that he was number 7, I wasn't even mad. I was just like, you know what? It's been a good run. I know that matchup is so bad because Saiyan Enhanced, that deck in particular, has so many crits. So the ball victory is out of the way. The anti anger is incredible. So MPPV is really going to struggle, and there's no way I'm going to win the survival mirror with all the endurance.
Hmm.
So for a deck that runs 3 win conditions, and to face a deck that crushes all 3 in the way that matchup does, um, I there's no I couldn't be mad. I was just like, yeah, it was a great run. I knew I lost already at that point.
So
The
you
matchup ended up being different than what I expected, but
So you say you run it's a triple, and I'll pivot to Shane in a sec here about this deck, but you say it's a triple victory deck. So your wins, your 4 wins, were they all in PPV? Were they mix of ball and PPV survival? Like how do you end up winning?
no, it was actually kind of a symmetrical situation. Round 1, 2 were both FPV. Round 3 was a loss by survival, and then round 4 and 5 were DBV.
Okay.
So it was MPV, MPV, loss, DBV, DBV.
So do you think the survival realistically it feels like you're going to win by MPPV or ball? The survival, like do you feel like there's actually surely survival in this deck, really, or is it just kind
I
of?
I mean, it's clearly the 3rd win condition,
Yeah.
but it can sneak up on you because for some reason Ginyu has a +2 mod on level 3 and 4, and with the idea that you can use Jace whenever you want, and level 4 being an attack, and Goldo can be used on level 1, 3, and 4 with no indiscretion at all, adding a +2/+2. Uh, I think and ball 1, for the splash +1. I think survival can kind of sneak up on certain people.
Okay.
But typically, if you get that far, you've already progressed to MPPV or DBV win con already. So I think it doesn't get there survival wise because you're already going to win by something else
Gotcha.
first. Um, but yeah, the +2, the mods can definitely sneak up on people
So
for
Shane,
sure.
being the architect of this deck originally, what was so we're looking at a Red Ascension Ball deck, and I've played against this deck and I think it's incredible. I think it's one of the best red decks in the format personally, at least sorry, red Ascension decks at the very least. I'm curious. So what was the inspiration behind the deck? Like what are kind of the key interactions that we should be looking at, and the reasons why you picked the levels you did?
The very first thing I thought of with Ginyu and Red Ascension was that his level 1, Frog, gains anger when entering combat. That was the genesis of the entire thing. Because Ascension's shtick is not that it gains the most anger, but that it gains anger within very difficult to disrupt timing windows. Gaining anger at the end of combat passively, you don't have to do anything. That's very powerful. So the fact that you could enter, grab an anger with Ginyu 1, end combat, grab another anger with the mastery, that was what initially drew me to Ascension Ginyu. Then the level 2, as you can see, I am playing Captain Ginyu Energized. I'm not playing the new level 2, although that level is powerful. This level has always been crazy with anger. It has the potential to raise your anger 4 as an immediate effect. It does not need to hit. That was used back in the day in Enraged Ginyu, Devious Ginyu, these decks that had secondary anger win cons, or in the case of Enraged, arguably primary,
Hmm.
because it's such an absurd anger swing. Um, very easy to time it in a way that you just gain all your anger at once and your opponent can't stop you from getting to level 3. Then, once you get to level 3 Ginyu, he begins to banish cards from discard piles. He does not specify which player he banishes cards from. So you can banish cards from your own pile or from your opponent's pile. And ostensibly, the point of banishing from your own pile is to set up for Raccoon and set up the cards you want to draw, which is definitely something you do in this deck. But immediately, when I see a card that can banish from my own pile, I think about banishing Panic. So I thought maybe I have a true triple victory deck on my hands here. And as the cards started coming together, it just got better and better. If you can banish Panic from your own pile, you can also banish Red Disregard. And then Red Disregard itself combos further with Red Panic. Um, Everything just began to feed into itself, and the deck came into being. Once we started initially playtesting it, um, back in like July 2021 or whenever the Guinea was previewed, it worked just way better than I thought it would. The balls give you an incredible flexibility. Um, Jace being an anger on board every turn, that's sneakily strong. Zarbon ally is like broken, and just like all these combos with Ginyu came together, and the deck ended up
Yeah.
really overperforming basically for its
So
entire
you
existence.
can only tutor Zarbon on 3 and 4. You did say that the 4 anger potential on Captain, and so at least in this build, there's only 3 allies. So the level 2 is still a 3 anger level potentially, but you are able to go grab Zarbon with this 2 at worst, and you can grab sorry.
Correct.
So 2 through 4 you can grab Zarbon, which is like you said, that is like such a it's like a forgotten thing. I feel because most anger decks don't have an ally search of any sort. And Ginyu
Uh,
anger has not been a thing since like you're saying in Rage days. So that's really I think it's really cool that you're running all these.
Well, I
Frank,
mentioned that
if
it can. I'm
sorry.
sorry, Kevin. You can go.
No, if I can add one thing, just a quick caveat about the level 3 and 4 tutoring. It tutors at the start of your planning step. So you being a ball deck, if you were to have ball 3 or 5 in your hand, you can essentially go into your life deck and fail to shuffle your deck, and then play a ball 3 or ball 5 to dig even deeper for balls.
Oh yeah,
For that,
absolutely.
it just lends itself. He's a strange stack. He's not directly like, hey, play ball, but you have a lot of nuances in terms of when you actually play the combination with the balls in the stack, that it can really work out pretty synergistically.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna.
I mentioned that he could gain 4 anger on that level 2. That's just in theory. I'm
Yeah,
obviously not
yeah.
playing Birder, but
Yep.
I wanted to throw it out there for the viewers.
Absolutely. Well, I was gonna say, and that's the thing is like I saw this Ginyu stack when it was previewed, and I'm looking at this like the 3 just being not an attack, but just a active banish. You need allies to have it out for the banish, and I'm like, man, like this sucks in like every other style. Like it's not bad, but red just has these like you said, the disregard and panic combination is like so sneaky. That's like, I you could not I think replicate this kind of Ginyu in any other deck because there's no other style that has these banish effect cards like from your own pile other than red.
And people also, when I was playing this, I'm sure people will figure it out by now, but I have had many games with this deck on Octagon where I have to explain to people that yes, Ginyu continues to banish from my own pile on level 4. I've had lots of people who just said to me, like in the middle of the game, unprompted, when I get to level 4, "Oh, well, at least you can't banish your panics anymore to search balls." And I'm like, no,
Wow.
that is not how that works. I can, in fact, continue to get Dragon Balls every turn.
Yeah. So on the Dragon Ball note, we've covered the Dragon Ball. The reason for the Dragon Ball is really like it feels like the panic synergy is the big part of it, and obviously the versatility. Like a Red Ascension splashing ball is just the versatility. It seems like would you say that's correct?
Yes, it just gives the deck another dimension. If you can't get into combat and start getting ahead proactively, it doesn't matter because you will win if nothing happens.
So on that note, we'll jump to the other board cards. One thing I noticed, and we'll actually kind of cover in some of the cards. So you run 2 Retreat, but you only have 3 drills. Now I'm curious, Kevin, in your gameplay at North Kai, did you find that being a problem that you would fail to have targets for red retreats?
Yeah. There were there only being 3 copies. In my experience playing red, when you run 3, it's kind of like when you run unleash targets. 3 is usually suffice, but it does run. You do run into issues here and there. The 3 drills here though weren't too bad because the fact that you can tutor Guldo so early in the game and actually use him to block attacks, and if you're prioritizing combat enders, you don't really lose the drills too quickly because you're not really taking a lot of damage. But I will say, I mean, you're not going to run 3 controlled anger. That's too much. Forward stance drill is there because you don't want to take an unnecessary attack. However, a 4th drill could be added. Attitude drill, I think,
Yep.
in the list now today does have attitude drill over forward stance. But on top of that, you probably could find a slot for a 4th one. But pretty much what you're asking is really just like the whole question of how many attached cards you run with a leash. It's the equivalent conversation. Sometimes when you run 3, it's not, you don't do as well because there have been games where like I think one of the games I lost all 3 drills early, but I did manage to rejuve one of them. I think I brought the ball 7 in the top deck, one of the drills to then retreat afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally, the 3 drills can run into issues.
Yeah, so it seems there are ways to get around that, obviously. But yeah, the fact that you don't have the fact that you did not run attitude drill blows my mind. But you don't run. There's no freezing beam in this deck, so obviously like it seems like the setups and the Dragon Balls are prioritized, Shane. So I'm curious, is it just because of the Ginyu synergy specifically with balls that you really forgoed like drill package?
I would love to have a profound wisdom for this response, but really, the list that Kevin took with him, unfortunately, I don't think had been updated since like last year. I put forward stance into the deck back when Guldo could not be used freely on 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah, in the previous
If
season.
you remember, in previous season, they said your Ginyu Force allies may make actions instead of use their powers.
Yes.
So Guldo was not live, and the main problem I was running into with this deck was losing to strong energy beats on
That
3 and 4.
Not to cut you off, but that note just reminds me of when red restriction when red restriction comes out and they clarify what an action was, and Ginyu just got that hard. Goldo got that hard nerf by red restriction. That was the coolest thing for me as a red player back in the day, and also a Ginyu hater.
Well, I used to be a Ginyu hater too, but I've come around. I love my little frog boy.
Yeah.
And I think attitude drill should definitely go in here. Forward stance can stay, and you can maybe cut a different card to fit an attitude drill. Because if you're on 3 and 4 and you have Goldo plus forward stance drill, you're almost invincible. It's very hard to lose at that point.
Yeah.
But attitude drill is obviously very powerful. The way you usually play this deck is that you play your first panic. Your first panic actually gets used to get a drill because it's just so useful.
Yep.
And if you find yourself needing that panic gone, you can always ball for your own panic so you can search more balls. But
That's true. That's true.
3 drills has always sufficed for me in Ascension. I've never run into a problem.
Okay.
As for prioritizing the balls and the setups, like just looking at the stack, you can see we play a ton of board
Oh
cards. You
yeah, I
have
mean
to draw the
three
line
of
somewhere.
so to move in
23 deck cards total.
to transition into the
Only
setups,
23.
only 23.
It's 23.
To
Yeah.
transition to setups though, like we're looking at them, and I mean Panic at 3. I mean the synergy's there. Destiny at 3. Your ball deck, your anger deck,
Ooh,
like of
it's
course.
24 actually. 24 actually.
Okay. Radar,
23 non-solids.
Radar obviously.
Yes.
Bribe at 3 versus like a 2
Bribe is great because you have so much ability to make Panic actually trigger. Bribe ends up being a crazy card, and when you have a surplus of bribes in play, it gives you a ton of flexibility to do kind of almost anything you want.
Yeah.
Really, sometimes.
I mean the Namek balls
Yeah.
are the Namek balls are indisputably the best balls, without a doubt. I mean they do
No
everything.
question.
They do
No
everything.
question.
They lower anger, they raise anger, they all the stupid stuff. So I can definitely, and especially again like the Panic. I mean, at worst, even if you're not playing the ball yourself, you have Panic to go tutor any ball you want with the Bribe on the table to make it live, and you have such good synergy with Panic to always make Bribe like live for a good effect. It feels like.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. One of the games I actually won directly off of Bribe because I was able to, like, ball 3 is like the ultimate hand filter, plus its anger. I was able to bribe a ball 3. I saw another ball, which I just held, and then was able to panic for the 6th ball, and get out of combat and play the 7th ball. If I couldn't bribe the ball 3, I would not be able to do that.
I think
Um,
somebody, maybe that was in your write up that you wrote that, or somebody that you played you wrote that up. I remember. I can't remember. I think it was.
yeah,
I think it was
I
your
was playing Anthony. I bribed the ball 3.
Yeah.
I drew ball 7 and a stare down. I stared down a potential crit and bear hug.
Yep. Yep.
And then he level 1 cell milled a single panic in a 20 card deck. So that just ended the game right there, basically.
That is about as good.
Bribe is crazy good.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
really
do
think if you're playing
understand why
Namek ball
people.
deck, you gotta run 3.
Yeah.
Well, I do understand why some people only play 2, because if you draw a bribe and you don't have any balls to bribe, it's just a blank card.
Yeah.
But the ceiling is just too high in this deck.
Yeah.
Going back to an earlier point about if this deck ever does win by survival, I don't think I have any official wins by survival
Okay.
in like my
I was,
whole history
and
on
that's
Octagon.
a great point. Yeah.
But I will say, usually if you're playing this deck and you get to level 3 and you're already up 30 cards or 20 or 30 cards, which has happened, usually people give up.
Yeah.
So you don't find out how you would win.
Yeah, that's fair.
But you can
Octagon.
bribe ball 7 enough times to kill somebody. I have been in a situation where I could have bribed ball 7 enough for the game
That's fair.
because it's just a 6-card swing for no reason.
Yeah. So we'll get into the we'll move off the my final closing note is because of the spacing of the deck, trying to run the combat enders, which requires drills, having such like the powerful, like really necessary setups, like absolutely necessary. There's no relaxation and no red blaze in this deck for ball control, and on that transition to that, like there is not a lot of ball control in this deck. I think I see the one shoulder grab and the 2/6 strike, and that's the only ball control.
Yeah.
Ball control is definitely a weakness of this deck, and I would love to patch that up, but you can't run more setups really. And you could and just fully sell out,
Yeah.
but
But
I
you
think
can't
that's
tutor
just
them.
too dangerous.
Like I think Krillin gets away with it, and Roshi, we to a degree get away with it because their ability to put them into play and search them out, or like to
Right.
utilize them on the earlier levels at the worst. And then Roshi, has Slumber to kind of help him mitigate the bad draws. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, my only critique on the board is like, man, Attitude Drill should be in here as like a one of, but where do you make the slot for it? It's like, do you really want it? Like you said, 24 planning cards, Kev. Do you really want 25 planning cards? Do you want to trade a planning card? Because all these other ones are always good, like almost always just better synergy.
Yeah.
So
this was one of many decks I built coming to North Kai, and I think one of the first games I played, we had that and the Friday night tournament we played,
Yep.
and I played against this deck multiple times on Octagon with Cheyne playtesting it, but the first time I built it and played with it in person, I think was truly when I realized that it wasn't running like your typical red blazes for most ball decks, which definitely is potentially an issue because you can't control your balls.
Yeah.
But if you look at his stack, if you can't disrupt his allies, or if Ginyu levels quick enough, to where he gets 2 or 3 hours on the board. The fact that his level 2 can gain 2 or 3 anger that quickly, I do think the MPPV can move so fast in some matchups where you may not even need to run BeautieZ because you're going to win by MPPV so many more games than DPV. But there were games where I was worried about the crit, and I really was searching for that Zag Strike, like just waiting for it. So I mean, Shane might be able to allude to it better than I can, but I think it's just one of those games where it's like, if they're going to crit, if they have a high crit potential, which I saw in top 8 against Hans Broly Kelly, I think you just concede that matchup and go straight for MPV.
Yeah, I think
for sure that's the strategy.
I think in that matchup particularly, it's like bribe ball 4 is your friend, and then in ball 2 even to try to drop him off of 1. Or sorry, off of 2.
I wouldn't even.
2 is really risky though. 2 is very risky if you don't.
Yeah,
ball
we don't have to touch on it now, but going into that matchup, balls to me were considered dead cards. They were not seeing play at all.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair, and I think
ball 2 is how I lose.
And I think you raise a great point. In this build particularly, the balls don't get played every matchup. They get played on a matchup where you think that like they don't have a lot of crits, they don't have a lot of ball control. If they have a lot of ball control, MPVVs, they name the game.
Yep.
So that makes total sense. But
so
we'll
also
actually
losing a ball isn't the end of the world unless it's ball 2.
Yeah.
And even then, ball 2 isn't necessarily the end of the world. I know we had a crazy game one time, Frank, Frieza versus Ginyu. Or actually, I might have killed you. I don't remember, but I know we ball 2'd each other like 5 times with my own ball 2. We were just passing it back all the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was commanding Frieza or what the fuck I was playing.
It was protective Frieza with super balls.
Yeah, I know what you're talking. Yep.
And but aside from ball 2, like if your opponent caps ball 3, you can end combat, or you can bribe it right back. Like if they have your ball 3, you can still bribe it if it's on the field.
No,
so you really don't mind losing your balls in a lot of situations, and there's ways to mitigate the capping. With this deck has a relatively high endurance count. For a red deck, you have triple Destiny, triple Blazing Aura.
Yeah. So on that note of triple A, so again, we get into the Destiny, Blazing Aura 3-ups. Hard to crit this deck. Has Ginyu on board block. Has the ability to put out a forward stance draw potentially. You don't run any ways to get the forward stance draw out other than the red retreat. So it's kind of like, it looks like a natural draw, which is interesting. But we go into Panic, sorry, that's correct. But we go into 3 stare down. Why did you opt to run stare down? Just because it's good? I mean, it is a freestyle card.
It's too versatile. It's too, like, in a more straightforward Ascension deck, especially ones that are not playing Dragon Balls.
Yeah.
Sphere can be the right choice because you want to not interact with your opponent. You just want to be mastering, banishing. You don't want to take an action to Confro or stare down your opponent. I understand that. But in this deck in particular, what you need for the turn, there's just so many situations where having hand knowledge can completely solve your problems.
Yeah.
You know what to block. You know what to use Goldo on.
Yeah.
You can rip the block out of your opponent's hand or the scary card out of your opponent's hand.
Or whatever it be. So yeah,
exactly.
I'm just I think that makes sense.
It's versatile. Yeah. That's what matters. And I know it's a non-style card. This deck has a non-style.
But you're already I think I counted 22 here. So it's like, your mastery is like you should never rely on it to skip.
Never. You do not.
Nope.
Not in this deck. At least.
Sometimes when I get the skip, I'm salty because it means sometimes I use the mastery planning to whiff. And now if I get the skip, it's like, well, I have to pass to give my opponent the action back, but I don't want to pass because I don't want them to pass and just end
the worst.
Yeah. It's that's interesting. That's a complete opposite problem of most Ascension decks.
No,
I know. I've successfully built the deck that makes me hate getting the skip.
No, and I feel that like I play Ascension. I feel like a lot longer than most people, and that sometimes when like I do get the skip and it's like, God damn it! Now if I pass and they pass, we get out of combat and like I can't play the cards from my hand. Like all I wanted was the anger.
Yeah.
Like.
Interesting.
And yeah, I did go into the event. There were 2 things I kind of went into the event, and one of them were never gamble on the mastery. I've played this mastery far too long with multiple MPs to be like, oh, let me go in combat. I'll skip getting anger and end combat. No, that is how you lose.
Mm.
And with this deck having 23 non-style cards, it's not you cannot rely on it. You cannot rely on the skip. If you, God forbid, like you get the anger, not to mention you're playing balls. So like if you're going to risk banish your ball, that means your entire game plan, if that's your only win con, it gets narrowed down to can you banish a panic?
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, your opponent knows that, and especially going up against a hand stack or another deck that can banish your pile, if they know that and they banish a panic, well, you might as well just scoop because your game's over.
You're narrowed.
No, yeah, your win condition just gets a lot more narrow, and you don't want to do that in a deck like this because the strength of the deck is that your opponent doesn't know what to do because they can crit your anger, they can crit a ball, they can crit an ally. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Especially this going into this tournament with this deck. Even in my round one, Jeff Sosa, he made a side comment or a joke about like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like that's the strongest part of the deck is it's so you really have to have experience against it to know how to play because it does have a very idiosyncratic strategy. And I alluded to it earlier. I mentioned people didn't even realize Ginyu 4 still banished from my pile. But even if people know what your cards do, a lot of people don't know. They will now.
What's your game
plan?
What's your game plan to beat this? Because you have ball, and then it's like, and if you don't know the deck list, it's like, can I compete with the red ball deck to out crit them? And then you have the NPPV, and then there's the ally factor too, like you said. So it's very hard to answer if you're doing just crits.
And even when you have a strategy, you can still just lose because they drew 7 balls.
That's exactly. You have the ball factor, so it's that's
even when you know I don't have the ball control and you start capping my balls. I already know I don't have the ball control, so like I'm already planning for you taking my balls. Even if you don't take them, that's just like a bonus, you know. So people, it can be very difficult to get against. Although I just want to point out that Eric has been in this room looking at my deck list this whole time, so he's gonna know how to beat this deck now.
Oh
but...
well, maybe, but this is an old deck list, like you said. So this is
it has changed a little bit.
The core is so we'll get into the blocks. I think this is really simple. 3 fleet, 3 brace, endurance, disregard. We've already talked about blocking hand, staple anger, time, obviously, 3 reflexes. I mean, the allies are so good in this deck. I mean, every one of these allies, like we're just gonna double up on the allies here, but like the allies are all good. Like you've talked about Jace a bit being an onboard anger one. Raccoon at worst, it's a +1 to hand. You have pile fixing with Ginyu 3, 4, and disregard. So like I feel like did you ever have any good plays with Raccoon in the tournament, Kev?
Honestly, no. I think when I played Kelly, there was I did set up a brace to draw, which I did. But I think that was more of a reaction to what Kelly was doing.
Yeah.
He stared at me and got rid of energy block at one point. And at that point, I was like, "Oh shit! I need an energy block." I don't know if it was sludge bomb coming in or burst or just something I just don't want to look at because I don't have a block. But I felt good about him not having a physical block. Dropped him. Used Raccoon, got a brace, but no, Raccoon was probably the. I also didn't go up against a lot of physical beats decks, so Zarbon wasn't great, but Zarbon's kind of uncuttable because if you play him against that matchup,
it's almost like an
oh my god,
win.
It's incredible. If they don't, especially when you have a red blazing aura active and you're not getting crit, you're just asking your opponent to attack you.
Between the endurance, the blazing aura, the destiny, like it's very hard to, and like again, Shane was saying, and you were saying, it's like if you have a Zarbon ally out against a physical beat matchup, you have ball 6 and Zarbon, you have anger, you have all this other stuff, Goldo ally, like what the hell do you hit? Like you need multiple crits to beat this deck with a physical beats deck, and that's just something that physical decks just don't have. Most physical decks don't have.
Yeah, honestly, Raccoon didn't do much outside of adding to the X on level 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
That's really all he provided was just a body. He was an ornament.
But not really. Probably not a cut though. I would never probably cut them.
Oh no. I still think you need
at worst he's another action. Because like one of the things you
Yeah,
said about the mastery skips, it's like at worst, if you really need to burn an action, you go throw a Raccoon, because it's not an anger action itself. Like maybe if you draw an anger card, okay, then you got anger later. But
and what's crazy is that Raccoon, he can become less important as the game goes on if he's not really doing much. But you can kind of stealthily banish your pile to
yep,
organize what you want to draw, like Shane mentioned before, with 3 and 4. So meanwhile, while your opponent's trying to control your anger, or wondering what you're doing with the balls, what's in your hands, if Guldo's in play, if Jace is gaining your anger, doing 7 life cards on 3 and 4. Meanwhile, you can be banishing things to draw with Raccoon. There are just so many things to consider when you're facing this deck across the field, that it really just stretches the opponent thin in a way where, I mean, it's really advantageous when you can give your opponent more decisions to make, because the more decisions they have to make, the
more
more
likely they're
chance
gonna
there is.
to to
Exactly.
goof it up, to goof it
Yep.
up. Yeah. No, I love
Exactly.
that's a great philosophy, and I think Shane, I think your list here, and I mean, it just really encapsulates that. There's just so much going on here, uh, to
I
do.
have to shout
There's
out the original Philip Taylor McGrath, who said that he builds decks to force people to make choices, and then the better player will make the right choice more often and therefore
well,
win.
and in the same vein, I don't know if it was Phil or it might have been Morbido or somebody said it's like I want like you slow. It might have been Tim even, Bateau, and was like you slowed the game down because I know for certain that like I'm gonna like outlast the other player in making the smart choices by slowing the game down.
That's very close to. I think that might have been Phil you're
Yeah,
thinking of because he said it for his blue Piccolo deck.
yeah, that was the quote. It was pretty much like I'm gonna slow the game down because I'm gonna make the
Oof.
more smarter choices than my opponent as the game
Greatest
goes
deck
longer.
list I've ever.
Blue Piccolo, oh my god,
Greatest deck list I've ever seen.
set one, set two, Blue Piccolo. Oh man.
I
Mm.
do want to say
But yeah, anyway,
with Raccoon, one important point about him is that he is an attack for shoulder grab.
that's true.
Um,
Oh, that's true.
That too.
so
Well,
when you
so on
play
top of
shoulder
that,
grab, uh,
you only run one.
you and yes, I can explain. There's not a lot of room for multiple copies. The
Yeah,
one
yeah.
shoulder grab is a card that you kind of just get to when you need it because um it's not there because it's shoulder grab. It's there for extra density on crit effects and answers to wall breaker. So
Mm.
we maxed out on answers to wall breaker with sack strike and mule kick, right? That's as many of those cards as we can run. Um, if I could play a third sack strike, I probably wouldn't play shoulder grab at all. I would
Yeah,
just play a
absolutely. I'm in agreement. So that it's just in
but
there for the one of splash because of anti-wall breaker, maybe the ball control, but you're really
yeah,
running
and
it
it
for
does
the
gain an anger, that does matter.
right.
Um, but what matters is like with Raccoon is if you draw shoulder grab, you have Jace and Raccoon. That's two more attacks coming at your
Four more
opponent
stages,
without
potentially the mastery. So
and that's a sneaky thing too. Thank you for bringing that up because the
yeah,
mastery says you can gain the stages anywhere.
and I
So you
forget
put them on Jace.
I
You
forget
let
that
Jace
all the
gain all the
time.
stages.
I forget that all the time about that mastery. The gain two off a crit. I'm like, I'll
It's
be
not even optional. It's
because
mandatory.
yeah, and it's great. It's because I don't play. If I'm playing anger these decks, it's like these Ascension decks I never crit with. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like beep
Hmm
beep anger. For me personally, I'm an ape. Very one-minded, one-track mind. But yeah, it's good. Moving on to the attack lineup. So again, the attack lineup is like really goofy. There's like all these one-ofs. There's like the one counter kick, the one energy blast, the one shoulder grab, uh, three meal kick. We've already talked about. Blinding makes sense, just like how to retreat. I kind of skipped over that. So you run controlled blast at two. Is it just really because you're in A all the time on the first level?
um, Control Blast is just too flexible not to play. Like if you draw
Yeah.
against physicals, it's a block. Um, and it's
The,
also a solid
Did you ever
attack. It's a
consider
5 life attack.
resourceful block in this deck?
No,
Okay. Just I
because
one is
here's the
dead.
thing.
Two is the
Yeah,
only good level,
exactly.
really.
One is dead. Going down to 3 or 2 can be fine. But the real issue is that physical beats is this deck's best matchup by far. It's almost free. If you don't get sacked early game with just like a dead hand against an OTK combat,
Yeah.
um, barring luck like that, everything's in your favor. You have tons of physical defense, tons of stages.
So
You're leveling to gain more stages. So physical blocks are really not that good, which is why I'm only playing 2 control blasts instead of 3.
Okay.
3 disregard, 3 blocking hand. And then 3 of the Omni block, plus you have blocks on board.
Allies
Um,
redirect too.
Allies
Blazing. You
redirect too,
have
and
Blazing Aura, Destiny going on. So like
ball 6.
it
So
I was talking. By the time this probably gets uploaded, I would have probably posted Jeff Sosa's list. But it was like Jeff is running like 20 blocks, and in this case, if you think about it, Steradon's a block, Blazing Aura's a block in a sense. You have your 4 Omnis on top of your 12 dedicated. So like, and then you have the 2 control blasts. So it's like there is like over a third of this deck is defensive, and then you have 4 stance and Goldo. So this deck
Yeah,
is
the
incredibly sneaky defensive, and then it's like good luck critting me if I have the modifiers out. And you have a ball 6 modifier. Like there are just modifiers up the wazoo in this deck.
yeah, the and I mean Shane coined it, but like he played this deck a lot against me, against a lot of my decks through playtesting. And it's gotten to the point whenever he plays Blazing Aura, he says he doesn't call it Red Blazing Aura, he calls it Red Time as Warrior's Tool.
Yeah.
it's
Red
so
Blazing
good.
Aura is one of the most
I love that card.
underrated
I love it
cards
so much.
in Red.
Red
In
Anger should run it. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, for real. I've run a Red Gohan or Goku Ascension decks in the past, and I've always run that card. I feel like any Ascension deck should run that card. It prevents crits. It allows you to survive.
I think the argument
Because
can be made that because of like Blazing Aura and Destiny existing, that was maybe an incentive because out of set 1, 2, those cards are out. That was an incentive to like not give red endurance for a while
yeah,
until
like
fancy, because
one of the things that in this deck, like okay, so one of the priorities I had running this in the event was if I see a Covenant Ender, I'm holding over everything else. But if I don't have a Covenant Ender, I'm
Blazing Aura.
holding Red Blazing Aura. Yes, because it is if you can end combat, you might as well be in combat and try to win that combat when it comes to damage because you don't want to die.
I mean,
Your
this card,
mastery is already banishing cards on top of your
yeah.
deck.
And I honestly wanted to dodge red ball for the exact reason between Destiny, but then you run this card like Sinister Choke can't crit. Most
Yep.
attacks are not going to crit unless like Aura Goku, like you said. Okay, Aura Goku has enough modifiers that he can out trade Destiny Blazing Aura potentially. He's very easy to get up.
Correct.
Like a +4 on the board is really easy for him. So he can outpace you. But anybody else, like you're not critting a Blazing Aura
Yeah,
combat.
it's if you play Blazing War, your combat you are completely safe. You can redirect all day to your allies and take no damage at all. Really,
Yeah.
it's an incredible card.
And
And it's severely underrated.
as Shane explained, the Zarbon ally with this card or like Destiny, good luck. You have
Yep.
physical stage beat, like free matchup. Go for it, dude.
Yeah, it's
So
really free. And this deck also has 32 endurance, I believe, which is a lot for this kind of deck. I mean, the blocks all have endurance.
well, and that's
Mule
like
kick is
the endurance factor is like I'm looking at control blast. I'm like, okay, like I mean the versatility of it is it's an active action at worst against a non-physical beat deck, and then it's like it's no endurance. So that's like that card sometimes gets cut for me because it doesn't have endurance, but I still get the reasoning behind it.
it's as I said at the kind of the beginning of this deck, versatility
Mm.
is kind of what I go for. It has all 3 win cons, which it can actively play for, even survival. You can play passively, you can enter proactively. That speaking of Red Blazing Aura, that's a proactive card sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't want your opponent to be able to enter on you and choke you before that card's active. You want to enter and
Yep.
drop Blazing Aura.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they gonna? And here's the thing: is somebody gonna Sphere of Blazing Aura when you have time and retreat in a deck? You know what I mean? Like you have, or Stare Down even. Maybe. I mean, I would personally, but like you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff that is like a Sphere fodder. And even with that said, like all the onboard blocks and all the blocks in general, like there's a just very defensive deck, sneaky defensive deck. Uninteractive with the balls in the setups.
Because if nothing happens, you'll win. If your opponent doesn't make something happen, you'll just win.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what Shane just says, that if nothing happens, you essentially win.
Yeah.
And going into, like I said, I hadn't played the deck in person before up until Friday night. Coming out of that mini tournament we had at the Northcott House, and the lesson I learned with that experience was, like I said, the Comet Enders were the best cards in the deck. And not only that was that because I'm Ascension MPPV plus ball, I felt no pressure to do anything against any opponent at all. If you
Yeah.
don't enter, I'm drawing board cards, I'm drawing balls, I'm doing whatever.
Yeah.
So I never felt the need to enter any single combat in the entire day. So that was kind of my philosophy. Like when I sit across from a matchup, if I draw, I play cards. If I see a combat ender, I hold it. If I see a blazing aura in between enders, I hold that. And I just kind of capitalize on the fact that the pressure is on you to do something. And it helps personally that like that's the kind of deck or
Limit the
situation
choices. Limit the
I kind of
choices, as
prefer.
Shane said. Limit the.
Yeah.
This deck is very much like you have to answer me. If you don't have the
Right.
like you said, your one matchup you try to dodge was Kelly, because he has everything he needs to win a MPPV ball. So obviously you went 4-1 in the Swiss. Again, Origoku we mentioned can beat the modifier shit, whatever. That's how that goes.
That game's on stream. You can watch that for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't think I had a chance at all. So
Okay. Yeah.
it was
And
very poor.
as far as the stream, Jeff Sosa on Bamboozled. I will, if I can remember, I will link it in the description. If you want to check out the Northcoast stream, Jeff Sosa streamed that all on Twitch, and hopefully it'll be up for quite a while if you want to check that out. But anywho, the last card, it's like you have the one, last two cards really. You have the one of counter kick. I guess why not? If you can slot that card in, it's cool.
It's crazy. It's one of those cards. I got turned on to it by playing my Ascension Vegeta triple victory deck, where you can literally just search it. Because red counter kick on controllable anger drill is 3
If you
anger
had the space,
immediately.
would you run 3 of it?
No.
Two,
It's
it'd be a good one too, I feel.
You could go up to 2, but if I had more space, counter kick was sort of an experiment, and I do like it. Kevin might be able to attest to how good it was for him in the tournament. There's plenty of cards you can pop with it in this deck that give you so much value. If you've already used an ally, you can just pop them because you'll get them back.
I think I won one game off the back of turn and kick. But if you look at I'm sorry, yeah, counter kick, turn and kick. We spent an hour talking about
Yeah,
before,
I've won
before
lots
this
of games
cast.
off of turn
Yeah,
and
we
kick.
were talking about stuff before this. So
if you look at the board cards, in terms of setups or drills, the only one you really you think it's worth destroying is controlled anger drill, because you're going to play one panic just to use it. You don't want to destroy it. You want to go tutor a drill.
Well, it's the same thing like you're saying ball for the panic. Now you have counter kick the panic, kill a panic to go banish with Ginyu 3-4. So.
But counter kick, if you had a 2 of, I think you would see a little too often, because the thing with the deck is that level 1, if you get off level 1, go level 2. At level 2 and on, from 2 to 4, a lot of your gameplay is X dependent. X is dependent on the Ginyu Force ally you have in play, and I think
you don't want to kill your Ginyu Force allies with counter.
Exactly. You don't want to do that. So, but you also don't want to kill a Destiny. You don't want to kill a Bribe. You don't want to kill a Forward Stance Drill. You definitely don't want to kill a Radar.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of stuff that you're willing to blow up, other than controlled anger drill. But sometimes if you've made it to 4, you've already used both your retreats to get rid of controlled anger drill to gain anger and get there.
I feel like it's like if you see the finish, it's one of those cards that, like, if I see the finish line, I'll play it. Otherwise, like, I don't need to see it. If I draw into it, it's not bad. It's not terrible.
Right.
It's playable. Right. So the one of is that the same philosophy for Red Energy Blast? Like, why is Red Energy Blast even splashing as a one?
So because you need it, you need you need to have the possibility of drawing it. Is the sad truth of the
You know
world.
what's funny, Frank? So I stated all the reasons why the matchup against Kelly with Enhanced Roll is already bad. It's also it's
giga bad when you run one fucking Red Energy Blast.
I know, and you cannot run more because you run allies, and it's a mandatory banish. So like even it's even that much more fruitless to play that matchup. That like it was.
Why Energy Blast over Celestial Strike? You just really want the banish, I guess.
Because you have to banish it. Destroying it doesn't do anything.
That's like a trick question. Like Celestial Strike's fucking awful. That card is fucking awful.
Yeah.
I think Celestial Strike is like an okay card. Don't get me
It's
wrong.
fine. It's okay. It's okay.
It
For the purpose of
doesn't
this
beat
deck,
good drill decks, but it helps you in the combat against like non-combative,
well,
non-enhanced
Celestial
ability.
Strike is a card that's good. Well, kind of like you just said, it's good in the combat. If you don't just play Celestial Strike, you play other cards and Celestial
Against
Strike. Like
soft boy drill
in
decks, it's fine, but like dedicated drill decks, it's
well,
just
in
not
my
working.
Rootless Tapion,
You like that?
I play Red Energy Blast and Celestial Strike, and when
Okay.
you have both those cards, you are killing drills.
Oh yeah,
You are
absolutely. Yeah.
pumping
Yeah.
into them with your
But
Celestial Strike and your Red Energy Blast. But in this deck,
yeah.
um, I honestly, I'm looking at this list and I'm considering taking out the counter kick and trying to Red Energy Blast, but there are so many times
Yeah,
you
you
draw
don't
Red
want to
Energy
play it.
Blast and you cannot play it. You
Yeah.
physically cannot
Yeah,
because
that's
you're going
fair.
to
Yeah.
have to pay
It,
for
it,
it.
it's an absolute dead
What
card.
about? I'm trying to think of. Is there any other card you could slot in, like if for
No.
a drill kill? And I don't. I just like I'm trying like
Wolf.
Celestial Strike, Wolf, Wolf. I
Well,
mean,
maybe.
Wolf is
Reality check
another
is always
non-styled
there
and
for
like
the.
yeah, it's another non-style. Not.
But yeah, that's it.
It's not anger though, so it's like there's no. And that's the problem. I don't think there's a single other anger card you could run other than that for what you're trying to do.
no. Burning Stance has to hit. Otherwise, I would play it.
Yeah.
And maybe it would hit because people are afraid of like Static Shot, which I don't have at this build. I do have another build that runs more aggressive cards,
I
but
mean, you could throw Raccoon, and they'll block that before they block anything else you throw.
yeah. People are really scared of Raccoon. It doesn't matter what you have on the bottom.
Well,
People just
that's
see
when you.
draw a card and they block it.
Yeah, but that's where like a good player goes, okay, am I looking at his pile and I'm like looking at the bottom because like my first when I see red ball I immediately think red relaxation I have to worry about, let alone Raccoon for Ginyu. So I'm like already like I'm always monitoring bottom of pile. If I'm lazy, I'm only looking at bottom of pile. If I'm actually like really like playing competitive, I'm looking at your entire pile the whole game. Like because ball 7
Yeah.
but not even just ball 7 like I just also need to count shit like I'm like I can generally guess deck lists off of like standard formulas but anyway different conversation but yeah yeah it's a bummer there's no other card to run at the same time I mean hey I could change that wink wink if I get to we'll see what I make here but
If there was a
Yeah,
card
baby.
better than Energy Blast, like a card that could
red energy blast 2
That could
Red
get rid of
Energy
a
Blast
drill.
2.
I mean,
red
honestly, I
red
think
extra energy blast
so. Energy Blast, I like you cannot go like it's only one of you, but you cannot go without it because if you don't have it, then you're fucked.
well the
But
argument is like you have bribe ball 4 but you have no way to. You don't. So what about like after image technique to like shuffle balls and loop balls?
No.
I do think Shane, you can tell me if this is the correct philosophy here, or at least what you're thinking about playing at least one rather than 0. Is that if you play enhance and they get overpower aura drill, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's
For sure.
period.
Yeah, you don't. Well,
Like,
yeah, you have to ball 2 or ball 4 away ideally because you're probably not
and
going to see
like
one of.
and both of those you don't want to play because ball 4 can get crit.
Yeah.
If they have a back crash in a pile, your balls you cannot play any of them because they can
So you
enter
just accept
and
so it sounds like you just accept the elegance enhanced.
Well, actually, this deck has a winning record against Enhance. It's Enhanced Broly specifically that's unbeatable because
it's the revealable crits because I actually
you can't answer Legendary Strike in the hand. There's
I
no
non-attack action Broly 2 to get like a potential double crit. Low anchor 2
Yep.
At worst.
Because I played enhanced deck in round 4 of North Kai. It was Anthony Tardino's enhanced cell. Now
who knows what the deck does. He's not some schmuck who's like, oh, you play balls.
Yeah,
And
Anthony knows what the deck does. Anthony also is running an MP that counters the allies.
Right. So this is what kind of it comes down to like the fact that you have 3 win conditions. Conceivably, you have MPV, which is your main one. DBV is your number 2, and Survival is number 3.
I was gonna say I don't think Ant plays overpowering aura drill in his cell deck though.
He does.
Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, I think he does. But the thing is, what he doesn't play.
I think he runs one of though.
I think he runs one of, but what he doesn't play in that deck, and I knew that, so he knows what my deck is doing. But I also know what the threats are he has. He does. I knew he doesn't run back crash.
Yeah.
So, and I played games with him before where if I'm in an aggro deck, he camps level 1 because cell level 1 is just a great anti-anger level 1.
Do you think if you win into the matchup not knowing his deck,
I'm sorry, say it again.
Would you have played the matchup differently if you didn't know his deck? Like if you saw Enhanced Cell, you never saw his deck list. Would you be worried about the back crash in Enhanced Cell?
I still think it would have been. It depends.
Okay.
If the game, if I knew he was actively staying on one, I think I would have been forced to play for DBV, but just be very careful and try to manage my crits around my ball one. Because if he doesn't have like back crash is gonna be worth 2 crits. So, um,
I wonder if he's ever.
yeah, just
Oh, sorry. Continue here.
I just gotta be aware of where back crash is
Yeah.
if he's using mastery. I don't want to do damage before he's used mastery to give him the ability to see back crash and damage, and then mastery for the eventual crit.
Yeah.
So I would have to play around that.
I wonder
But
if
knowing
he's.
that,
Oh,
no,
I need.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I like really want to make this point, but I'm curious because
Yeah.
because level 4 sells a search and you'd reveal the card. I'm curious if he's ever considered like a legendary strike or tantrum at like a 1 or 2 in the deck to just get like on 4 for reveal crit, because overwhelming power you can't, or you can tutor it with 4 but you can't rejuvenate with a mastery. So in a ball matchup, to bypass having to run back crash, you could just run like tantrum or legendary strike, which are reveal crits with the level 4 search. It's only good on level 4, but tantrum would be
Yeah.
more playable for that deck.
I mean,
He has before. He has
Okay.
played one tantrum in the deck before that
yeah,
exact reason.
Okay.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine, but I even remember personally playing an MPV matchup against Anthony in Octagon a couple weeks before, where he did level, and personally I thought he should have stayed on level 1 because he has ultimate anger control on that one. I'm losing
Yeah.
2 anger a turn, and in the matchup I saw in the tournament, he did stay on 1 for the entire game. We ended the game with him on 1. I eventually was able to get to 3, but I wasn't going to get to 4 and win the game on MPV with the amount of deck I had left. But still, yeah, knowing he didn't play back crashes, I knew DBV was going to be the most efficient way to win. Because survival with the endurance was not going to happen. I wasn't going to push enough damage, and the anger was going to get lower -2 every turn at minimum, even with burst and sludge weld.
Yeah.
So.
And that deck can definitely, if it wants to, could sit on 1. Your draining attack, even your draining attack's not terrible against Ginyu. Like draining attack can banish all the Ginyu allies. So like, you know what I mean on the hit. So
I did. I mean, I got lucky. I saw a lot of balls early.
well, you talked about the panic play, the mill panic banish is how you beat him.
Yeah. He was kind of controlling that combat, and panic just popped out after he had used his master for sludge bomb. So the game was over right there.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I do think Enhanced Cell should be a losing matchup, but I don't think this particular deck has lost to it yet.
Okay.
I think I keep getting, every time I play that matchup, I just get like really lucky and something happens to let me steal the win.
Like on paper,
it should be losing.
On paper, Cell 1's really good against a lot of decks, but then it's like you don't want to stand Cell 1 against 90% of your matchups. So, you know, but
well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, if you got one last comment, I was gonna say.
No, I was just gonna state again that I think I just got lucky. Based my event results were MPV, lost, DBV.
Yeah.
Round 4 and 5 were both. I think I saw balls. I got a total of 5 in the first like 7-8 turns, which is really, 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 really fast. I mean, it still comes down to keeping the balls in your side of the field. Anthony had a combat of like double turning kick, and I just happened to have like 2 blocks. Thank God. So it came down to just I think I just outdrew him. You know.
Yeah.
I can't really control that, but
okay.
But yeah, it was a tough matchup.
Well, I realize that I didn't do this for my Jeff video. I usually ask the bad match, and we've kind of covered bad matchups, so just by talking about what's kind of bad. So I won't get into that, but I just want to say, to kind of start wrapping this up because we're going a long video here. For one, props to Cheyne for brewing this up. This is super cool. This is like got some really like unique interactions with the Ginyu stack. On top of the fact that it's just like a really like, it's not like necessarily a conventional red ball in a lot of ways. Like it is by running a lot of cards, but there's a lot of really interesting choices in here. A lot of these goofy one-ofs and the allies I think are really cool. It's something you're not going to see for most ball decks. So I again, props for like just big braining like all the combos on that. And then on the same note,
Thank you.
I want to just say also, Kevin, congratulations picking this deck up and running it and top cutting with it. I mean, you went 4-1 in Swiss. I mean, it doesn't. You really can't. You cannot ask for more than to top cut, but let alone have a good record in Swiss. And then it's like you play just a bad matchup and you lose. You know, like this is a deck
Yeah,
that I was definitely like. I was like, man, I think I can handle it, but like I really don't want to play it if I don't have to.
yeah, I do. For what it's worth, it was the first elimination matchup Kelly and I had played in an event, and for what it's worth, the way the game ended up, I thought the game I was going to end up right here, but the fact that I got to level 4, I think the highest anger I got in 4 is like 2 or 3 anger. I could not believe the draws in that game were crazy on my side. So if I play the game like 100 times, I might reach that close to a victory, like maybe like 3 or 4 times, 5 times. It was really incredible.
Yeah.
I don't want to go without saying that Red Ball is I know it's sacky, but there's also I feel it does require a nice touch when you play it, because you kind of, if you're managing 3 different win conditions and if you invest resources in this win condition or that win condition, it dilutes the other 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to know what your matchups are and how to play, what to hold, when to push, when to kind of just stay steady. I don't know if I would have been able to play this deck the way I did without the experience from the event the Friday night.
Yeah.
And Frank, I'm also a victim to a lot of insight from Wayne.
Father Wayne, man, bless Wayne that
Wayne is a
weekend.
wise man.
I had a 15-hour drive out west with Wayne and Anthony Tardino, and like I don't think I would have been even close to the player I was at North Kai without that insight.
I absolutely resonate with that, man. We're very fortunate to be at this point in the fantasy community. We are very fortunate to have so many dedicated, passionate players, incredibly intelligent players. Whether it's, and that was the awesome thing with North Kai is all of them were there. Not everybody, but a lot of those people were there, and just to be able to bounce off those people is incredible. An incredible community we have left over at this point in the game. So many people that you can talk to are incredibly insightful and helpful. And so if you are a newer player, somebody that's trying to get better, like shed the ego, listen to people, test stuff, like try recommendations, because like, oh my god, man, like.
Yeah, I was not. Shane can probably say attest to this. I was not in a great place. Like I probably took a hiatus from this game for several months, and I came back and I was being very negative about how I felt about what decks I liked, what I thought was good, what was good, but like how do I combat what's good. I was not in a very great place, and I think I came to North Kai with like 10 decks that I had built like couple before.
You printed out 8 decks and cut them up.
Yeah.
Thursday night.
I had
so
and like even on the drive, we got in the car to North Kai and Ant was like, "How many decks you got? What do you think you're doing?" And I'm like at three or 4 decks, and he cracked up because like that's a lot of decks to be thinking about like before an event. But I had 2 decks organized, ready to go. But one of them was Enlightened Gohan. I just didn't like the list. Thank God I played you before we went. That really turned me off of that deck. But the Ascension Ginyu, I just wanted a sack factor.
Oh man.
I really wanted a sack factor I feel like it could steal at least 1 or 2 games outright.
Yeah.
And it just ended up feeling like my heart was like, if you don't play this, you're going to feel bad.
Yeah.
So
well, I think you made the right choice, and congratulations on your run, man. Great
Congratulations,
run,
Kevin.
by all means. And Shane, again, credit to Shane for building this and brewing this and sharing this. That's a real homie move as far as I'm concerned. So
I made sure to let everyone I played know that like I let them know like, hey, I wish I could take credit for this deck, this concoction, this machination, but it is not my build. But I am happy that I was able to do it justice.
Yeah.
I feel like if I just played it and it fell in my face, I would do Shane a disservice.
You had to play good. You had the pressure from Shane looking over you from
Well,
afar.
going to what
And,
Kevin said earlier, the thing about Red Ball is like people view it as a very sacky archetype, which it is. But the difficulty of playing it in a tournament, like a prolonged series of games, is you need to be able to accept there's going to be games where you just draw so well you can't lose. There's going to be dream games where you get entered on and you draw all 3 of your 40 board cards. You get killed. There's nothing you can.
and this deck does it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
Yeah.
bricked I bricked every game, every single. But you know what? If you prioritize competentors, you can beat that brick.
Yeah.
Well, you
Beat
need
that brick.
the mental resolve comes from the games where you have to reach into the cosmos,
Yeah,
expand
yeah,
your cranium to like
yeah,
fill the
yeah.
universe.
Those close ass
Because the
games.
red ball combo is going to extend like 7 actions into the future.
Yeah,
Like it to set yourself up turn by turn by turn.
yeah,
And it can be frustrating when you're playing this way, like trying to think of all the possible scenarios and calculate all these plays. But then you're red ball, so you just die,
yeah,
or you just win because you drew good cards.
Yeah.
But you
It
have
also
every
didn't
game you have
help.
to be able to do
Sorry.
that.
yeah,
Yeah. It also didn't help that my first match was against Jeff Sosa,
yeah.
Excuse me.
whom I have a history with
Oh man,
TOP.
a grudge match,
Yeah.
the grudge match. So
Yeah. And I met Mike Martin and Jeff for the first time in
yep,
person, and 2 minutes didn't pass before they mentioned our TOP game where a mistake was misjudged or was
yep,
I fucked
yep.
up. But yeah, the first round I couldn't believe I was sitting across from Jeff when I just met him, playing him,
For
and
years
and
playing him, so yeah, that's
yeah,
cool.
and then
That's cool.
outpacing him and win that game, I couldn't believe it. Going the top cut, being 4-1 as well, being the only one to take him down, felt really great until you did, Frank. So
Yeah. Well,
that must feel great too,
yeah.
man, for real.
Oh, absolutely. A different conversation. Well, anyway, this is running really long, guys. I just want to say that I love this deck list. I love this deck. It's so fucking cool. It is an intelligent. It's like probably one of the more intelligent red Ascension decks, I feel. And as Shane said, you reach into the cosmos for some of those games. But there's so much going on here. I don't. I think this is like a really fun deck if you want to challenge yourself a bit with some red ball. You want a little different taste on it. And again, congratulations on the run. Super awesome deck, guys. I really thank you both for your insight on it. And anybody who has more questions about it, by all means, you can always talk to Shane and Kevin about it, who have a lot of direct experience with this
Talk
deck.
to Shane. Don't talk to me. I just
Yeah.
ran it. He made it.
But
So it's all Shane.
but again, I'd like to thank you guys both. Thank you for being on here. I really appreciate your input and time.
Thanks for having us, Frank. And I
Thanks,
will
man.
say that I loved watching Kevin play this deck.
Yeah.
It brought me great joy watching Kevin have fun with something that I built and watching him beat people.
Yeah.
Something that I built, and like him messaging me after the games, being like, "Oh man, this is what happened. This is how I played it. I played so good," or being like, "Well, I drew 3 setups and I died."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, that happens."
It was very encouraging though. After I played the Goku in round 3, as soon as I look at my phone, I have a message from
Shane.
Shane immediately. That was bullshit. Is all I saw.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because all I saw was I saw Kevin put it like draw his hand. I saw all dead cards, and I saw Goku had 5 drills out. I was like,
No, that's awesome.
"That's
Yeah, I
Again,
couldn't have done anything
again,
different.
shout out to the community on this one, and especially thank you, Jeff, for streaming North Kai. Thank you so much.
thanks,
for doing
Jeff."
That was awesome. Anyway, guys, we're gonna cut this here. We can keep talking, but anybody wants to check it out, again, I'm gonna keep doing a lot of these top cut deck lists. I'll try to reach around to some of the other events as well for people that are available. But anyways, take it easy. Peace.